I'm delighted to see so many people here today, and I know that Jeanne would be happy to see so many people here as well. The only thing that could have possibly made her happier is if y'all had bought tickets to be here. I had not intended to speak today. I was going to sing a song. Jeanne always asked me to sing a song, and she asked me to sing at Jerry's funeral just a couple of months ago. But Beaver asked me to say a few words, and I want to thank you for that, Beaver, because this is an honor of my lifetime. The irony is Jeanne would have been the one to help me with a speech of this importance. My name is Patrick Henry, and Jeanne Robertson was my friend. Most of y'all knew that she was much more than a friend to me. She was a mentor, she was a coach, she was a parent figure, and she was a collaborator. Some would say co-conspirator. She used to tell her longtime assistant and friend of over 40 years, Tony, the queen of tickets, and my mother-in-law, that she'd say, Tony, if I die first, double the price of the product and set up a table in the back. Now that would be tacky. So if y'all want to find me after the service, I'll be happy to take your orders. What can I say about Jeanne that you don't already know? I mean, after all, you all know that she was 6 feet 2 inches tall, or 5'14". She was wife to Left Brain, mother to Beaver, named after a rat, grandmother to Ryder, named after a truck, and grandmother to Gray, named after a crayon. You knew her. She loved Duke basketball, Auburn football, and all things Elon University. She was the star of Alamance County and beloved by people around the world. But we all claimed her as our own. I'd like to share Jeanne Robertson from my perspective. Most people knew Jeanne from the persona they saw on stage, elegant, graceful, wickedly funny. Beaver said that he got a front row seat to his mother. I like to think I got a backstage pass. I got a glimpse behind the curtain. And oftentimes that glimpse would have Jeanne sitting at her desk, probably in sweatpants and an Auburn Tumors Corner t-shirt, working on material. And when she'd stop working on material, she enjoyed her favorite pastime, which was working on material. She perfected the craft of Southern eloquence and created up until her last day. As Beaver said, the day she died, she was surrounded by papers working on material. I remember when she wrote the story about the magnetic bracelets. You know the story. She called me and she said, "Are you busy? I'm coming over." I said, "Well, come on." She came to the house, knocked on the door. I invited her in. She didn't want to sit down. She stood there in the foyer and told me this story about the magnetic bracelets. Now, just to refresh your memory, Jane Tucker had told her about these bracelets with a magnetic clasp. It would be easy for her to put the bracelet on in a hotel room when she was by herself on the road, but you don't just wear one bracelet. No, you must wear a bunch of bracelets. And so she went to deliver a speech. She was sitting there at the luncheon, and she reached for the salt and pepper shaker. And the fork flew out of the hand of the woman next to her and stuck to her arm. I laughed so hard I doubled over. And when I stood back up, she looked at me and she said, "That's all I needed to see." And she turned around and walked off. I was so grateful that she would do that with me. She would bounce material off of me. She would share ideas. I would share ideas with her. She was one of a kind. We were recording a video, as we often did during the pandemic. I mean, let's be honest, we had some time on our hands. And we were recording a video where she would put on this miracle age-reducing face cream. It's a really funny premise. Aaron, where are you? You're in here somewhere. Aaron, one of the Nashville people, gave us that idea. And she would put on this face cream, and she was sitting there in her bathroom in her robe and a towel around her head, and I had the camera. I was set up getting all these cool angles. And there was a point during the video where she would sit down and let the face cream, the age-reducing face cream, take effect. I said, "Jeanne, we need cucumbers." you know, like they do in the fancy spas, they put the cucumbers right on the eyes. So she said, well, let's go to the fridge. We went to the refrigerator. She opened it up. She turned and said, I don't have any cucumbers. But then I saw the light bulb go off. She reached into her refrigerator and pulled out a jar of pickles. And so she sat there for the next 45 minutes with pickles on her eyes, pickle juice streaming down her face, because she knew it would be funny. As long as it was tasteful, Jeanne would do just about anything to make people laugh. With over 115 million views on YouTube, Jeanne was a grandma gone viral. She loved producing content for the internet. And when the pandemic hit, bartenders, rodeo clowns, and professional speakers, we all found ourselves on the same unemployment line. And so I, along with others, the Nashville people said, you need to do a Facebook Live. She said, a Facebook what? Facebook Live. So it started out as me holding an iPhone on her back porch, evolved into 4 cameras, lights, switchers, soundboards, microphones, and it turned into Live from the Back Porch with Jeanne Robertson. During the height of the pandemic, we were getting over 120,000 views every week. And consistently, that show was ranked in the top 20, sometimes the top 10 of the most watched live streams in the world, which was pretty impressive. And it was all due to Jeanne and her natural, approachable way about her. We had amazing guests on that show. And I guess what was so neat about it was so organic. It just grew naturally. I mean, for me, standing there on the back porch watching her jump up and down because she had walked outside and there was a snake on the porch and she screamed. Had no idea your mama could jump that high. Walked down on the back deck, there's a snake. She jumps up in the air, she comes back in screaming, and then goes, keep rolling, keep rolling. We had amazing guests on that show, people that you don't or didn't know, but you may know now. People like Al Walker and Jane Herlong and LaDonna Gatlin, Mark Shamrock, Debbie Childers, Tara Brown. But we also had some Kelly Swanson, who's here. We also had some names that you probably do recognize, like Mark Lowry, Shonda Pierce, and the Grand Ole Opry legend Jeanne Seeley, who flew all the way from Nashville to North Carolina with her husband just so they could sit on the back porch with Jeanne. I got to be there. I was the Gelman to Jeanne's Regis. So many people are watching this service right now through live stream, which I think is so appropriate. And I want to talk to y'all right now because I want you to know how important you were to her. So many of you have said how her videos and Saturday shows got you through some of the darkest moments in your life, and I'm here to tell you that your presence, your love, and your kindness got her through some pretty dark moments in her life. We have a friend of the show who's here today, Linda Harris, who flew all the way from Oklahoma to be here. Linda used to send Paul's Donuts to the house on Saturdays so we'd have something to eat and share with our guests. And Linda, I want you to know, Jeanne may be gone, but Tony and I are still here. And I like Paul's Donuts. Every Saturday I'd walk into her house to set up for the show, and she'd be in her office, and she'd be cutting up questions that she had printed off that her fans had submitted, and she was using a paper cutter from 1877, I think, wasn't it, Beaver? But she wanted to make sure that when she reached into that smiley face bucket, it was truly a random drawing. That was important for her. Not so much to me, but it was important to her. We recorded an audiobook together. When we decided to do that one, she wanted to do an audiobook because she knew a lot of her fans had a hard time seeing the small print. And so she wanted to do an audiobook so they could listen to her stories. And so I started to look for recording studios. And although I found plenty of recording studios that could do it, I thought that it might be difficult for her to stand and record for 4 hours at a time, which is usually what she did. And so I said, Jeanne, I think we can do this ourselves. We had the microphones, I had the recording software, had a moderate know-how. And so we began to walk around the house looking for the best place to record. Now, these are very sensitive microphones, so you had to have complete silence. And so I'd sit down in her office and I'd set up, put the earphones on, but I could hear that fluorescent light buzzing. So we go into another room. I'd set up and I could hear a dog barking outside. And then I walked into her closet. The closet that used to be Beaver's bedroom. And all of a sudden the sound disappeared. Because of all the clothes, it became the perfect recording studio. So for the next 5 weeks, we sat in her closet, me on one side of the packing table, her on the other, and we recorded "Don't Bungee Jump Naked" and other important stuff. Available in CD or download at www.storejeannerobertson.com. She had plans for a new book. She said she had written the stories, we just had to put them together. We were talking about a docu-series about her and her life. Al McCree and she were already booking the 2022 tour. The last tour was called the Jeanne Robertson Rocking Chair Tour. I begged her to call the next one Jeanne Robertson Off Her Rocker. I'm not sure she was on board with that, but I think she was going to come around. What was so unique about Jeanne as a humorist is that she was clean. She didn't feel the need to use profanity. She told real stories. And although they may have been spiced up just a bit, the people in her stories were real. Her characters were real. Her best material came from her husband, Left Brain, her son, Beaver, who she would always say privately was the funniest one in the family. Privately, she would say that. Her bestest friend, Norma Rose, Jane Tucker from New York City, her sister, Catherine, Tony, her assistant of over 40 years, and so many more. I used to ask her, why don't you ever use an opening act? And by opening act, I meant me. And she would always say, my people can't sit that long without an intermission. And she didn't want to use an intermission. They can't sit that long without having to use the bathroom. And for so long, I thought that her fans had horrible bladders. But that's not it. She didn't want to share the stage. She was protective of her stage. But that changed. That changed. You see, Jeanne realized that the influence that she had on other humorists and other speakers. She and Al McCree, one of the Nashville people, created a humor competition where the winner would get to open up for her on stage in the city of their choice. I want you to understand how unique this is. Here, Jeanne had been a professional speaker for well over 50 years. She had developed her craft into almost perfection. She had developed the ability to sell out 2,000-seat theaters, and now she's willing to open her stage and share her stage with an up-and-coming artist. During the pandemic, we invited a number of guests to be on the show, up-and-coming humorists, comedians, experienced speakers who just looked up to her and admired her. And it became apparent to Jeanne how important she was to them. She had been elevated into the role of mentor, and she embraced that role. In the end, she loved sharing her stage. She gave and she gave and she gave until she gave out. I believe her body just couldn't keep up with her schedule. Jeanne had a Christian faith. We talked about that in the end. And she cherished the prayers from her family and her friends. Friends like Glenna Salisbury and Naomi Rhodey. Her fans who would send prayers her way. She heard you and she appreciated them. Her last speech was delivered in Las Vegas, Nevada at the National Speakers Association annual convention. which was fitting because of how important NSA was to her. It's the association that she was a member of for over 40 years. She was bestowed every award and honor that they offer. It's the association that saw her as a national president and a board member and gave her so many friendships, many of whom are represented here today and who are watching online. That last speech in Las Vegas was delivered almost 58 years to the day that she walked across the Miss North Carolina stage. For 58 years, Jeanne Robertson graced stages big and small around the world, bringing laughter, joy, and her unique brand of Southern charm. I'll miss my friend. I'll miss our conversations. I'll miss the laughs. I will miss our Sunday night family dinners. I'll miss her advice and her support of even my craziest ideas. I'll cherish the time we spent together. I will always remember that the magic is in the details, and I'll do my best to find the humor in everyday situations. But most of all, I'll always remember to keep laughing. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fear relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise.